Well, it's true that I didn't get much of a chance to see what you really look like, in the dark and all, she said, smiling. Don't blame me, he said, laughing. I drove all the way home like this in broad daylight. Speaking of daylight, she murmured, looking closely at his reflection in the mirror. Do you mind? Jayla reached for an applicator and opened up a different set of colors than Logan had seen before. What are you going to do? He asked. Oh, it's just that, since it's already evening, and since we're staying in tonight, I thought I'd experiment a little. More of a glamour look for you with brighter, bolder colors. No one will see but you and me. Do you mind? Only for you, dear, he sighed, leaning back. But the smile in his eyes gave his real consent. Tell me about your trip while I'm working on you, she suggested. Oh. That reminds me, Logan said, sitting up and almost getting an applicator in his eye as a result. You wouldn't believe what happened. With what we've been into the last few days, Jayla smirked, I wouldn't even begin to try. But sit still. Logan let himself be positioned again, then said, You know the meeting was set up for 2 o'clock, and that gave me time to get to Denver and check into a hotel. I did like I usually do, putting on my good suit and brushing my hair before I hooked it into the clasp. When I got to the meeting, I got the strangest looks from a couple of the people who were already there. No one said anything. I mean, they said hi and all, but no one explained why they were looking at me so strangely. For a while, I wondered if I still had on some of your makeup or something. No, you didn't, unless you put some on after you left. I checked before you walked out the door, Jayla said. I know. Well, I mean I know I didn't have any on, but anyway, they were still looking at me funny when the boss walked in, Mr. Harrison. Did he look at you funny, too? I'll say. He stopped right in the doorway, which caused the person walking behind him to bump right into him. Is there a point to all this? She asked, smiling as she continued her work. That other person is the point, he said. This woman walked in behind him, and she had red hair just like mine, pulled back into a ponytail like mine. It was even about the same length. And she was wearing a dark blue pinstripe suit, too, though of course hers had a skirt. The really kicker, though, was that instead of one of those little round things that women wear at their necks, she even had a man's sort of shirt collar and a regular tie. It was almost exactly like the one I was wearing. We couldn't have been dressed more alike if we had worked it out ahead of time. Oh, dear, that must have been something to see. You can say that again. I figured I was history. Either someone would figure I was sucking up to get the job, or that I was making fun of her, or, well, any number of things. All bad. What happened next? The girl, woman I mean, laughed and then did a little, eek, same outfit. And you look better in it than I do. Did you? What? Look better? Oh, no, not really. I mean, she wasn't any great beauty, mind you, but of course she looked better than I did. Why? I don't know, exactly. She just did. Just because she was a woman? Wearing makeup? No, that wasn't it. I mean, she was wearing makeup, but that didn't really matter, at least not to me. Hers was really subtle, almost up to your standards, and I know what difference that would make. So, what else was different? He shrugged, disturbing her work again. I really don't know. I'm sure you'd know immediately, but it was just a feeling I had. As though she were, neater or something. Who was she? Oh, sorry. She's some VP of one of the operating units. Customer service or something. They'll need access to the database we'll be building. Her name was Spencer, I think. I can look it up. I don't think we'll be working all that closely, except in getting some requirements defined. Do you have a picture or anything? No, he replied. Then he said, wait a minute. I might. I'll bet her picture is on their website. We can look at it later, Jayla said, pushing him back into his seat. I'm almost done. Just sit still for a little longer and tell me how the rest of the meeting went. Oh, yeah. Well, after she laughed and diffused the tension, things went really well. It was as though the idea of, I don't know, doing weird things to win the contract was considered and dismissed, and we were back on more normal considerations. If anything, it might have helped a little because the geek crowd started talking data structures right away like it was a done deal that I would be working with them. Being too weird for upper management was just fine with them. One of their information technology guys, I think I'll be working with him quite a bit, his name's Tyler something. Tyler Andrews. Anyway, he has a ponytail as long as mine, and he had some earrings. And another of the guys has the shaggiest beard you ever saw, real Grizzly Adams, only he's barely 5 feet tall. And just to show there's no prejudice, I guess, one of the IT guys was wearing a pinstripe suit and tie just like Harrison. Maybe he's Harrison's nephew or something, Logan said with a grin. Anyway, Harrison interrupted after a few minutes to ask me to step out so they could discuss my proposal, but I could see I had the job. A couple of minutes later they invited me back in and kicked the technical types out so we could negotiate the terms and conditions. The next day I started work. Good, she said. Almost done. True to her word, it was only a few more minutes before she stepped back. At first, she didn't say anything. Then she looked at Logan with an almost apologetic expression in her eyes. That bad? He asked. She still didn't say anything, just motioning him to look for himself in the mirror over the vanity. Dear, sweet, Lord, he breathed. I told you you had great cheekbones, Jayla said quietly. I think this is more than just cheekbones, Logan replied, looking at his face in the mirror. This time Jayla had not held back in any sort of attempt to be almost too subtle to notice. The look he saw reflected was still understated and elegant, but the 10-foot rule had gone completely out the window. From almost any distance, his face would look dramatic and glamorous. And very, very feminine. It wasn't the girl-next-door cuteness that Jayla displayed, by any means. His face had stronger features than that, with a sharp chin and narrow nose and those terrific cheekbones. But his eyes were large, and her magic made them larger. His lips were dramatically accented in a color that was darker than anything natural, yet by no means gaudy. It was a more refined, almost severe face than Jayla wore. By the standards of women, it was only moderately attractive, of the sort that is often characterized as handsome in a sense that is actually damning with faint praise. But by the standards of men, well, it just didn't fit into those standards anymore. Of course, the polo shirt he had pulled on after they got dressed, and the shape within it, didn't do much to enhance the image. What was more important, though, was that they didn't do much to undermine it. His slender build was also well within the range of women, albeit a minimally endowed one. Some experiment, he said, after a very long pause. Yes. Well, now I know. Know what? He asked, still unable to take his eyes off the image in the mirror. I know what my glamour colors look like on a very elegant face, she explained. She sounded almost reluctant when she said, sit down again and I'll clean it off. Why? You mean you want to stay looking like that? Logan turned away from the mirror and looked at his gorgeous wife. I'm not the one who will be looking at it. If you want me to clean it off, fine. If you'd like me to stay this way, then it doesn't matter to me. I see what you mean, she said, examining his face. I guess it wouldn't hurt to leave it that way for a while. Whatever you want, he said. She shook herself a little, tearing her gaze away from the surprise she had created, and said, so, show me this woman that almost kept you from getting this job. They moved to the study and Logan fired up the computer. In the dark screen he could see a fairly clear reflection, and Jayla caught him tilting his head to get a slightly different angle. She snickered and said, not bad, huh? Huh? Oh, yeah. Well, it's certainly different. He got busy calling up the right websites, then surfing through to find the corporate officers. In a moment, he had Spencer's picture on the screen. What did you say? Jayla asked, then answered her own question, not any great beauty? I'll say. You're a lot better looking than she is. Well, right now that might be true. But there's still something. It's her hair, Jayla declared suddenly. Her hair is, the best way to put it might be that your hair is sort of, flat. Flat? She nodded and said, you just pull yours back into the clasp, letting it sort of lay there. She's had hers really styled, with some bangs she can brush to the side but they don't get pulled down tight to her head. And her hair is wavier so it looks thicker. If you did your hair like that, you'd be lots better looking than she is. Logan shrugged and said, if you say so. I don't guess I really care. After a moment, Jayla's face showed that she had reached a decision and she said, if you don't mind, I could really use your help in working on some makeup designs for redheads, especially the lean and elegant look. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but you really do look good enough that I can learn a lot from working on your face and your look, but that's just, experimenting. It's not something you need to do for me on a regular basis. Don't want a hubby that looks like a wifey? He laughed. But Jayla didn't laugh with him. He looked sharply at her to find out why she was not sharing in his humor and found a more thoughtful expression. Earth to Jayla, he said softly. Oh? Sorry, she said, blushing. What were you thinking about? Oh, nothing really, she said, but at his unbelieving expression, she continued. It's just that, well, you really look good like that. I guess I was wishing that it was okay for men to wear attractive cosmetics because I really like the way you look. The things that make makeup styles work for women, brighter eyes, smooth and healthy-looking skin, eye-catching lips, those things all look good on you, too. She shrugged and said, I know it's not fashionable and it would be embarrassing to go outside like that. But if it weren't for old-fashioned rules, I'd like it if you could look that way all the time. Logan stood and wrapped his arms around her. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll do it whenever you ask. I don't particularly want to be gawked at in public, but you're not asking for that. And frankly, as long as it takes to do, I hope you won't want me to get all done up every night. But any time you want, either to experiment or just because you like the look, just say the word. It doesn't make you feel, unmanly or anything? Beautiful, if you can ask that after the way we spent this afternoon, then I am really doing something wrong. Point taken, she said, smiling. What no one else can see. The next morning, Logan was surprised to find Jayla dressed in a long-sleeved blouse with her jeans despite the sunny day and casual Saturday plans. He didn't say anything until breakfast, when she reached for the milk to pour over her cereal. What did you do to your arm? He asked, then realized the answer to his own question. Oh, nothing, she replied, pulling her hand back. Logan reached over and gently took her hand, pushing her sleeve up her arm. On it, and on the other when he checked, were bruises at the wrists. We are not using those things again, he declared flatly. It's not that bad, Jayla said. Bad enough. Jayla sat for a moment in silence, then said softly, I'm not sure I want to give it up. Logan was not convinced. It was an interesting experiment, and fun at the time, or so I thought, but nothing is worth injuring you. You only did it because of that silly movie and my reaction to it. I wish now we had never gone to see it. I don't, declared Jayla, still quietly, but firmly as well. I'm not going to try and resolve this right now. But I have to tell you, I found it a lot more interesting, more exciting, than I expected. I need some time to sort out my own feelings on this, but please keep an open mind about it, at least for now. Her husband shrugged silently, clearly not convinced, but not willing to argue. That would have to do. They finished their breakfast in silence, then Logan gathered up his gear for that week's travel and work. While he was busy, he didn't notice that Jayla disappeared for a few minutes. When she returned, she was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. It's likely to be warm today, she explained, unasked except for a raised eyebrow from Logan. He looked more closely and realized he could no longer see the bruises on her wrists. Stepping closer to his wife, he once again took her hand in his. What did you do? Just a little makeup. That is my specialty, you know, Jayla replied, smiling. Logan frowned for a second, then shrugged once again and wrapped his arms around his slender wife. I love you, and I never, ever want to hurt you." "I know that," she murmured. "But sometimes you get too protective. I'm a big girl, and sometimes a bit of discomfort can be a very small price to pay for a lot of pleasure. Goodness, this is no worse than the ache after working out, and this workout was a lot of fun." She looked her husband directly in the eye, her own elegantly arched brow now asking a silent question. He finally grinned wryly and said, "Okay. It was certainly fun. But we shouldn't have to hurt you in the process." "Okay, that's a valid point," she said, agreeing as much to make sure they parted on a positive note as because she was convinced. Their parting might have been reasonably positive, but that was about the best that McDaniel could say for the day. While pre-flighting the 310, he walked into the tip tank and banged his eye. Then, he made a bad landing in Denver, after which his rental car was not ready. By the time he made it to Harrison's company, he was far from the best of moods. His tension flavored the discussions for the day, and in his room that evening McDaniel knew he needed to change his attitude for the next day. If he couldn't convince his colleagues that he was pleasant to work with, his contract could be terminated even more quickly than it was signed. That resolution, however, fell before the image he saw in the mirror the next morning. Overnight, perhaps because he was sleeping on his side and blood could pool in his cheek, he had developed a world-class shiner. His right eye, actually the cheek and eyelid, were showing a bright array of colors that were anything but subtle. "Oh, great," McDaniel muttered to himself. "It looks like I got in a bar brawl last night. Real professional." Things didn't look any better while he shaved, nor when he dressed. Now that the contract had been won, he wore business casual clothes just as the Harrison software experts did, so an impeccable suit offered no counterpoint to his inelegant appearance. If he had been a cartoon character, a light bulb would have shone over his head as he packed away his shaving gear. In his kit were the cosmetics he had worn the week before to please Jayla. Moments later, well, actually about 15 very long minutes, the multiple colors of his black eye were hidden beneath a different set of colors, these carefully blended to appear as though there were no unusual colors at all. It made him nervous. All day long McDaniel was afraid that something would show, either that he was wearing makeup or that the covering would fail and his black eye would show. That distraction might not have been much more valuable than irritation at convincing his clients that he was an effective aid to them, but it was at least different. By the end of the day, however, he was back on stride and his help was beginning to be recognized. He did duck into the restroom a few extra times, checking and if necessary repairing his handiwork, but that wasn't particularly noteworthy. The next day was more of the same, minus the nervousness. He still used and renewed the covering over his facial bruises, and he still got away with it. By the end of the week, he probably could have come in wearing the full glamour look Jayla had shown him without risk to his contract. His insights and suggestions were that effective. So he was flying high in more than airplane ways when he got back to his beautiful wife on Friday. "Hi, gorgeous," McDaniel called cheerfully from the airport on his cell phone. "How about you let me take you out to dinner?" Sure," she said, surprised. Usually after a long week he just wanted to get home and rest. Then another thought came to her. "You're not wearing makeup again, are you? I don't need for you to show me yet again that you love me enough to put up with the embarrassment." "Oh, heh. You wouldn't believe the story I have to tell you. Meet me at Artful Dodgers in half an hour, okay?" "Okay, sure," replied Jayla, forgetting until she was off the phone that he hadn't really answered her question. When she got to the restaurant, she looked quickly at her beaming husband to see if he had indeed decorated his face. Despite her interest in the way he looked when wearing cosmetics, she was relieved to see that he looked fine. That is, he looked like any other ordinary guy, trim and neat but dressed well within the styles of contemporary men. "Hi, beautiful," Logan called to her. Well, that was proof he was feeling pretty good. She was pretty enough to attract plenty of attention on her own without adding to it with calls across the room. They usually stayed pretty low-key in public in order to preserve any privacy at all. On the other hand, she was certainly not dressed to fade into the crowd, either. A snug black leather skirt, shorter than she usually wore, with a matching bolero jacket practically shouted elegant sophistication at the room. She was wearing heels, too, a fact Logan noticed immediately. He had always been fascinated by her model's legs, and they were really on display in that outfit. "Hi handsome," she said quietly as she reached his table. That triggered a strange sort of flush to his cheeks, and it took Jayla a minute to realize why. "You are wearing makeup," she said. "At least, just what did you do?" "I owe you a bunch, beautiful," Logan started, then laughed at himself. "Well, I always owe you a bunch, but this is special. I'm not, following you." He grinned and said, "My contact with Harrison has been renewed, and it's all because of you." "Indeed?"